Shalom, all praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakakodash. The double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and elders of JMS who world peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Aina. The title of this video is Dismantling Iran, the four-pack strategy, four-part strategy. And ultimately, I took that title from this title right here. All right. And basically, I just wanted to, chime in on, everyone is saying, well, why didn't America attack Iran, basically? And what they're saying is basically there's a plan, and that plan has failed, and that's why he didn't attack. And but my original thought was this: uh, Matthew 12:29. It says, "For else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house." And ultimately, that goes into the title too, right? There, we're gonna get that four-part strategy, but we're gonna get this chat GPT real quick too, because when they struck the first time, it was kind of like unaware, right? They just struck them after that, like towards the end of that 12-day war with Israel and Iran, and they said now peace and safety, right? And Iran didn't close their airspace, and they wasn't ready. But now it was brought back like, okay, America's about to strike. They're sending troops, this and the third. There were some reports, from these military analysts saying that, well, you will need more strike terror groups in the area, but that's not there, so we don't know. But ultimately, Iran knew that they was coming, and they closed the airspace to prepare for that. And basically, anything in the airspace that would have came would have got dealt with by Iran. So that was my original thought. AMP says, or how can anyone go into a strong man's house and steal his property unless he first overpowers and ties up the strong man? Then he will ransack and rob his house. All right, so I got a few videos. So they didn't bind the strong man because the plan didn't work. And I'm gonna get that video with this Zeus explain that the four-part strategy. So I said that Iran closed its airspace in June 2025, before being attacked by America. And it didn't give me a yes or no. It basically explained a whole lot of things, but the answer is no. The airspace was closed, but it wasn't like it wasn't Iran, that closed it. People just didn't go over there because it was already a war happening, you know. It says during the escalation in June 2025, when the U.S. and Israel conducted strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and Iran responded with missiles, Iran's airspace was effectively closed to commercial and other flights as part of the conflict environment, right? It says, according to multiple reports, Iran and Iraq completely closed their airspace following the strikes. Okay. It says the closure wasn't described in the same way as preemptive state closure before a U.S. attack, but rather as part of the conflict itself. Right. So during this time, they just closed it because there was things going back and forth between Iran and Israel. Then it said, summary, yes, Iranian airspace was effectively shut to normal flight traffic in June 2025 during the height of the U.S.-Iran-Israel conflict, but this closure occurred as part of the escalation and safety risks associated with the strikes and counter strikes, not as a standalone move simply to preempt a U.S. strike. Then I asked, did Iran close its airspace in January 2026 because of a possible attack from the U.S.? They immediately said yes. In mid-January 2026, Iran did temporarily close its airspace amid fears of a possible U.S. attack. And now everyone's asking, like, why didn't America attack? And we're going to get this four-part plan where their plan failed, right? Ultimately, regime change, sanctions, upwards of the people, and then the final thing would be the strike. But Iran opened up its airspace, or closed its airspace. It was ready for an attack, and on top of that, is killing the people protesting, like the heads, the agents. So the protests simmer down, and then what I'm going to show you too is that they have immediately just begun the same process again of trying to put sanctions on them again. So they're trying to restart the process again. It says, yes, in mid-January 2026, Iran did temporarily close its airspace amid fears of a possible U.S. attack. And that was just like yesterday. And high intentions, but it was not because an actual attack had begun. And that's the point I wanted. Yeah, they closed their airspace to prepare, right? And going back to my original thought, which was Matthew 12 and 29, or else how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. And that's why the Most High Yahweh Bashmi Shah is mustering the host to the battle for all these wars, right? Uproars of the peoples, pestilence, earthquakes, and famines. He's about to come and bind this devil up, right? And that plan is going to work. It's going to fall through, right? So let's get it right here. This is the four-part strategy that America, they basically failed. You know, that's why they didn't strike. And on top of that, Iran was ready, right?
This is what is going on in Iran, is right from the U.S.-Israeli playbook on how to produce regime change. We have basically a four-part strategy. Using the U.S. military is the fourth part of the strategy. But let me just quickly walk you through the first three elements of the strategy. The first element is that we put sanctions on a country and we wreck that country's economy. And we do all sorts of things to make the body populace in that country profoundly unhappy because they're suffering enormous costs. We're punishing them with these sanctions. This is what we did in Venezuela. This is what we did in Iran. So you want to remember when these people are protesting, right? They're protesting because of the terrible economic conditions. But who played the principal role in creating those terrible economic conditions? It is the United States of America. So that's the first step. Then the second step is we decide at some point that we're going to foment massive protests and we're going to fuel those massive protests. And this is what happened in Iran in late December of last year, December 2025. And there's all sorts of evidence now. There's a very famous piece that came out in the Jerusalem Post on December 29th that makes it clear that Mossad was deeply involved in what has been happening in Iran. Furthermore, there are comments by President Trump and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that make it clear that the United States has been involved from the get-go in terms of fueling this crisis. I would also note to you that when the Iranians turned off the internet and they shut down phone services, what the protesters then were using were Starlink terminals.
And that's a part of them, you know, knowing what's about to happen and preventing it. And on the same token, right, we're doing the same thing now. We're knowing that Yahweh Shah, right, Yahweh Bashmi Shah is on the way, and we're preparing ourselves, right? And that's why I wanted to grab a few scriptures real quick. 2 Peter 3 and 10. It says, but the day of the Lord, Yahweh Bashmi Shah will come as a thief in the night. Right? But that's the one I wanted. It says, but the day of the Lord, Yahweh Bashmi Shah will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burnt up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, right? Looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Lord of Yahweh Bashmi Shai, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and elements shall melt with fervent heat. Right. So it's asking, you know, what type of manner you ought to be, and that is, you know, basically becoming one with our power. You know, praying, fasting, watching, right, preparing yourself, rehearsing the righteous acts. All right, and like I said, that's exactly what Iran did. Right, I wanted to grab this one now. It's gonna come as a thief in the night, right? And but we know about it. We're preparing ourselves, and that's what Iran did. This is Matthew 24 and 42. It says, "Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord Yahweh Bashmi will come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known and what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore, be ye ready also, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. So, you know, Iran opening their airspace at the possibility of attack, and now everyone all over YouTube is saying why didn't they attack? Because Iran was ready, and on top of that, their plan failed over here.
And it turns out they had 40,000 Starlink terminals. Who do you think gave them those Starlink terminals? We know the answer to that. So the second step, again, is to foment and fuel protests, which eventually turn into a revolution and regime change. The third step in the process is to foment a massive disinformation campaign. That's to convince everybody in the West that these protests are generated internally, that the United States and Israel have nothing to do with it, and that the protesters are noble patriots, and that we have every incentive to back them.
And they're being found out, to be liars, and that we see exactly what they're doing, right? It's not as easy as before. The Most High Yahweh Bashman Shah is definitely destroying this place, because we see that they're the ones causing it. This Isaiah 47:1, it says, "Come down, virgin daughter of Babylon, and sit in the dust, for your days of sitting on a throne have ended, O daughter of Babylonia. Never again," this is an NLT, "never again will you be the lovely princess, tender and delicate. Take heavy millstones and grind flour, remove your veil and strip off your robe. Expose yourself to public view. You will be naked and burdened with shame. I will take vengeance against you without pity." All right, and that's what Yahweh Bashman Shah is doing. So we know that they're doing it. We know that they went to Venezuela illegally. We know that they're helping Israel illegally, trying to take Greenland illegally.
Them. And furthermore, this disinformation campaign sends the message inside of Iran that the regime is finished. The protesters are on a roll. There's no way the regime can shut this down. This time is different. So what we're trying to do is generate momentum with this disinformation campaign inside of Iran. Then the fourth step in the process is the United States military, and probably the Israeli military as well, come in once the protests have reached a certain point, and we attack all sorts of critical infrastructure, all sorts of elites inside of Iran, and we deliver the coup de grace. We finish off the regime. This is the basic playbook, right? You see it at play in Venezuela, right? It's regime change of a sort we've seen many times before. Now, one final point, it's failed.
What do you mean by it's failed?
Well,
because we haven't done phase 4 yet, which we're going to get to in just a second.
First of all, the number of protests in Iran has been reduced drastically. There are remarkably few protests today compared to how many there were a week ago. So it's just very important to understand that. Furthermore, a very important Israeli commentator, he's on Channel 12 in Israel, who's highly respected inside Israel and outside of Israel, has said explicitly that the protests have failed, that the government crackdown has succeeded. And by the way, I think if you listen carefully to what President Trump is saying and doing, he recognizes that this campaign to overthrow the regime has failed.
Right, you can check the video out, right, and it has failed, And that's part of the reason, possibly part of the reason why they didn't attack, because now they have went back to trying to, be innocent. Let me get this, what is this, Psalms 55, I believe, let me see. Yeah. Because he's now talking about, I'm getting reports now that the killing in Iran has stopped. And I actually got another video I got to bring out. I'm gonna play it right after this. That's all lies. It says Psalms 55:20, he have put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He have broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. his words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. And ultimately, he's saying, "Oh, there's no more killings happening in Iran. We don't need to go in and try to save them." And ultimately, the plan has failed, right? So now he's trying to be back invisible, you know. Let me see. Oh, yeah. So my phone went out of service, but mind you, all my devices in the truck is Verizon. I got a couple devices. And but my phone service was out, but my other devices was working. That's how I was able to have internet, and everything. I made my video last night. But yeah, I guess that's what had happened. Let me see something with this real quick. Um, so China got this new app. It's called Are You Dead? And basically, it's like you open the app every day, right? If you don't open the app within 2 days, it sends messages to all your family members. So now you have to, and that's just like another step towards the MOTB, right? It can say things like, well, we're going to put the MOTB in you, to make sure you're alive and all of that. So you can check that out. I thought it was interesting. I forgot what I was looking for. I'm looking for somebody. There we go. Oh, yeah, that was it right there. Okay, this is it right here.
Weeks as well. There are videos coming out from.
So mind you, Trump was saying, "Oh, there's no more killing," this, that, and the third, but that's because his plans have failed. All right.
Iran right now that are showing, or you can hear the gunfire. I want you to keep in mind that the people don't have weapons. Only the military has weapons. So all of this gunfire is coming from the regime.
All right, and this is a part of the plan too. I don't know if this dude is an agent too, but there's actual civilians there already that's been implemented there by Israel and America that do have guns, and they're shooting back at the cops. That's what the gunfire really is. But this goes in part of their plan. Well, it was like a third step where they make you believe, like, oh, it's not us, it's them, that you see they're killing the people. But no, there's actually people in there trying to stir this thing back up, and have uproars the people and things like that. But they're just failing. Okay.
Toward the civilian population.
Anyway, you can check the video out. So there's still killings happening. There's executions and things like that, right, happening. But Trump said that is not happening. Let's see if I can find that. Real quick. All right, so it's all good. But Trump said that you can search it up on chat if you want. Trump said there is no more killings happening or executions happening in Iran. And ultimately it's because his plan had failed, as the dude said here. Okay. Let's grab this.
President Trump said the stopping of a planned execution in Iran was good news, and he hopes it stays that way. But the president warns the U.S. would still take action if needed. Thousands are feared dead as the regime continues its crackdown on anti-government protests. CBS News national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now. So Charlie, the president indicated that, having spoken to sources, that the regime was ending its crackdown on protesters. So what do we know about the U.S. military posture in the region at this time, given that the Iranians seem to be easing it up?
Yeah, Vlad, I spoke to folks at CENTCOM, Central Command, which is the region that oversees Iran and the Middle East this morning, and they called it status quo. It probably would be better described as status quo ante. And the point is, the United States still remains poised to strike Iran with a whole array of U.S. military.
That's the point, because ultimately they still will attack, right? They're just, I guess they have to reposition themselves, because pursuant to Jeremiah 15:45, we know the least of the flock, right, will draw them out over here into this area, right? And Lisa Flock has a greater Israel project that they want to, take place.
Assets in that region, primarily at Al Udeid.
And they also want to feel protected, on their borders.
That is the largest base in the Middle East and Qatar. There was a drawdown of troops, actually an advisement for troops to leave or military personnel to leave. That's kind of been put on hold. So they haven't reduced necessarily the threat level there, but they haven't increased the number of troops they're withdrawing in light of the tensions going on with Iran. But, the bombers are in place, the stealth fighters are in place. We were watching last night. We were expecting that something might happen despite what President Trump had to say about turning the temperature down. There was a lot of activity.
Right. So here's the part where the plan has failed. He's going to say the airspace was closed down. Iran was ready. We were ready. Everyone had the live streams going, right? And nothing happened. That's because you would have went over there and got obliterated out of the sky probably,
Activity around Al Udeid. A lot of activity in the skies around Syria and Iraq last night, too. Last night, Iran announced a NOTAM, that's a notice to airmen to stay away from Iranian airspace. That's kind of twofold, the reason to do that. Obviously, to make sure that commercial aircraft avoid that area in case of conflict, but it's also kind of sending a message to the United States and others that anything seen in the skies over Iran would be considered an adversary and therefore fair game.
Exactly. Trump says killing Iran has stopped. And then breaking news, Trump admin hits Iranian officials with new sanctions. Isn't that going back to step one of the 4-step plan?
Thousands of people in Iran in the streets. They want their country back, and for that brutal and repressive Islamist government to get out. In fact, it's not just a little brutal. It's already killed, that we know of, between 12,000 and 20,000 people. President Trump is weighing his options on how to respond to the slaughter. And a wide range varying from a direct military strike, a cyber attack, or other non-military approaches.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or.
We got a lot happening with this. It's stopping. First of all, they got to make alga. I believe this is alga culture great again. They got some fucking milk on the table with him over here talking about it's stopping. We're done, and that goes back to that Psalms 55 and 20 that I just read.
Executions. So I've been told that a good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
A U.S.-based human rights group now says the regime has killed more than 2,000.
All right, so I didn't watch none of this video, but as you can see, the title says Trump admin hits Iran officials with new sanctions, right? That's breaking news. That's the title. And that goes back to their phase one of their 4-part plan, right, that they have failed already one time. So I guess they're trying it again. All right, just going on that, Lord willing, you will edify from the lesson, Shalom, to the overelect, which consists of men, women, and children, Shalom.